Okay, hi all. Welcome to the Birds of Feather regarding the polyglots, not silos. This is Bhavabhuti, joined by Rashekar and Ranjit. We also have other participants in the room right now. So today we'll be dealing with polyglots. I mean, it's a larger question, I would say. So the history is that I was trying to view, or like I was trying to develop a view application, and I was trying to get it to the native environment. So I was looking for solutions, essentially in free software, to be able to write once and should be able to package it for multiple platforms. Then I came across a project called Tauri, Tauri. So they were essentially saying that they're going to include WebAssembly in their roadmap, and they're going to support multiple languages for that matter. So in their about section, they have a beautiful paragraph titled the same: polyglots, not silos. So it says that we are basically, I mean, especially the JavaScript community, I think would all know that there are groups and groups fighting each other, saying that like I am from Angular and you are from React, we are not the same, bro. These kinds of stuff. But essentially, all of us are compiling all the code into JavaScript. So why fight over frameworks? So I mean, so what they generally say is that we shouldn't be limited, or we shouldn't be uh, you know uh, I would say restricted to the single language paradigm, as in it strongly depends on the features of that particular language or that particular framework, leading to a lot of problems while we are trying to solve some issues in our free software. So what they say is they're trying to break all these single language paradigms and building up multilingual or multi-language paradigms. So this I thought we should all discuss, probably find out few points on different languages. Like I come from JavaScript background. I can see many of them from Python and Rust and other backgrounds. So how do you see this? How do you connect all of this to application development? So this is our larger scope of it. So I'll be helping you drive the discussion. So by the end of this discussion, I am positive that we'll be understanding all these concepts on multiple things. Even if you like, just tell out your opinion, we'll try to channel it through to the discussion. Thank you. So before we start, I think we can have a quick intro round. I think people in the room can quickly say out their name and what they do.
Yep. Thanks, Bobby, for introducing the topic. And this is Haris Sai. I'm a coordination committee member at Switch. Also, I'm working as a data engineer in NewsClick right now. Yeah, this is my profile.
Hi everyone. So this is Roja, and I'm working as a senior software developer at Quintelli, and I volunteer at Switch as well. Yeah, thank you.
So hi, I'm Naveen, and here are my colleagues. I request everyone to introduce. And yes, I'm a free software hacktivist and open hardware hacktivist as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Yuvraj, a free and open source enthusiast. I'm a full stack developer at Switch.
So, hello, this is Satya, and I'm activist at Switcher.
Hello, this is Praveen. I'm a member of Switch and pursuing my BTech.
Hi, this is Anjali. I'm a free software activist.
Undergrad.
Right.
Hi, this is Rajshekhar. Uh, so I'm a Debian packager and also a coordination committee member at Switch.
This is Ranjit, general member.
Hi, this is Satya. I'm working as software engineer at Ghana.
Hi, Satya.
Hi.
Hey, hi. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll just start off with a quick preliminary round. Each of us, telling their experiences with application development and why, like, what do you understand from multilingual, or what do you understand of what are the state of the programming languages right now that you see either in your institutions or in the companies.
Yeah. So my quick view about this thing is like, so previously when I was working with Drupal, so Drupal comes from a PHP background, and most of his development has PHP. Uh, Back then, when I have started learning React and Vue and other JavaScript frameworks, so I wanted to integrate, like, whatever the pages I have made, I wanted to integrate that into the Drupal platforms. But it didn't give the direct scope directly to integrate that. But in the later stages, it has included that, and also the scale of development inside Drupal community has also increased, because they have started accepting different platforms to integrate their code into the CMS. So this thing helped a larger audience, like coming from a JavaScript background or any other people. They have scope to contribute to one project for Drupal in their domain also, like without having knowledge of PHP also, they can directly contribute to the Drupal. So uh, so this way, if Drupal wouldn't have opened its gates, it would have been harder for anyone to develop. Let's say in the latest times, we have static site renderings, or like uh, at the server side rendering tools. So if Drupal wouldn't have released the scope, then it would be much harder, like building the entire framework or entire library inside Drupal PHP using PHP. It would take much longer time to develop the same sort of project. So it would also take back Drupal again. So that's my point. Anyone can add or
Yeah. So I work in Python. So I'm restricting myself to Python, and whenever someone say about PHP and Java, I'll be like shivering, which is not a good sign at all. And one more thing, like whenever actually a lot of your juniors who are recently passing out from their colleges, they might have asking you about which language I have to learn now, something like that, right? So whenever they were asking like that, we will say, right, since I am learning Python, I am working on Python right now, I'll say like, okay, Python is best learn Python. And someone others will say like, okay, Java is best learn Java, because from since long years we are using Java, so because it is good to learn Java. And so we are creating, we are setting a wrong example for them. I feel like we are setting a wrong example. So language should not be like a barrier, and it should not be like, so we should not feel like, okay, Python is different, Java is all are so they are I mean, for each problem, it is a way for to solve a problem, but it should not be a barrier to solve a problem. So we should not like set a wrong example to our uh, I mean juniors who are coming from the colleges. Yeah, that's what my point is. Thank you.
Right. Anyone else?
Yeah, so when it comes to like this is my point. If anyone want to share, they can share. So my voice is clear, right?
Yes, yes, it is clear.
So we restrict ourselves to a single community or a single language basically. If I'm comfortable with Python, I only depend on Python, or I only stress more on Python, and also I promote only people doing projects on the particular language itself. So I feel I'm comfortable with that point basically. So that is my view, and yeah, that is my point. Like I feel that as a comfortable, a disappointing point.
Yeah. Like I invite Ranjit to speak a few words.
So I remember a few years back a very fascinating project was announced named as Project ARA by Motorola company. So Project ARA is about modular phones. So now we have mobile phones with all tightly packed as a single unit, and sold by a single company. But the fascinating part of Project ARA is you can assemble all the you can assemble custom parts. I'm sure maybe 10 to 15 years back, we used to call assembled desktop computers and packed desktop computers. Okay, so when you people uh, used to make their own assembled choice of parts. So their favorite keyboard, their favorite model of mouse. So this was a thing around 10 15 years back with desktop computers. I was very fascinated how if that idea would be implemented in mobile phone, that will be revolutionary. Okay, so we need not to buy a new phone just because it has 6 GB memory, say, or we need not to buy a new phone just because it has a new feature that it has 108 megapixel. Okay, so if you find that the new 100 megapixel camera is released, you can just replace your camera with that just camera component. You need not to buy a new phone. Okay. So this was thing with hardware, but when it comes to software, I think we all have the same problem. So if I build some web application in Python, so for every functionality, I have to search for Python libraries. Um, when it comes to data science, for example, I started my journey of data science with R language. So R is a very good language. It's a GPL license software. It has very sophisticated, very good libraries for data science. I couldn't find competent libraries in Python. But the point is, I have to wait months and years for someone to write similar library in Python because there is no interoperability between Python and libraries. So that's the problem I think we have with the mainstream all these libraries we are using. Not just in the data science, even in the development. We have Drupal, we have WordPress, we have PHP-based CMS, we have Python-based CMS, we have Ruby on Rails-based CMS. We don't have interoperability between these solutions. So I think now we are living in a hell of silos. Maybe that's what we should break all these silos and apply the concept of modularity, what we have seen in the assembled computers, what we have seen in the computer, into the software development. We have to build components, modules with specific functionality, and we have to encapsulate them, and we have to ensure they can interoperable with other components. Imagine I'm building a front-end application in Vue.js, but for some specific functionalities, if I find some good libraries in React or Angular, I just pick some components from those languages. I can add them into the Vue front-end I'm building. I need not to recruit someone or wait for someone in the community to rewrite all the functionality in Vue. Okay.
Yes.
Um, I think this is what we should aim for. and especially I think there's an overlapping interest with free software movement. The silos by design are resemblance of the proprietary proprietary software camp. The modularity, customization, adapting to the local needs. The modularity model is more close to and it resembles the free software approach. I think it's also a political clarity we should have on this. As free software activist, we should aim to break all these silos and build interoperable solutions. Like I think we have a few solutions. Few years back, I have seen that in JavaScript, web components. There's thing called web components in JavaScript, but that's the borders of web component is very limited. It is reforming the silos within the JavaScript, but we may need larger interoperable models, like between languages too. Yeah.
Yes,
I think I'm done with for the first iteration of talk. I want to listen from others.
Yeah, I would like Raja to speak a few words.
Adding to Ranjit, I have an example regarding this multi-programming paradigm concept. For example, I was working on this visualization project where I need a Python programming to fetch the data. And also we can use some pandas visualization dashboards, or maybe we can use tools like Bokeh and etc. But the functionality that we were working on is the best suits is Leaflet.js. So what I had to do is fetch the data API from using the APIs from the calling from Python, and for the maps, for example, I have to visualize the maps. For maps, I utilize the library Leaflet.js, and inside the Leaflet.js there is an interoperability between the frameworks from inside the JavaScript. For example, Leaflet utilizes a couple of components from the D3 framework, which is a data-driven document frameworks in the JavaScript as well. So this is kind of interesting interoperability. I had worked on this Python and as well as this JavaScript. So I just want to add this one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, just to add what Ranjit was trying to address. So earlier he was mentioning about web components. I would like to add a line to it. Web components started off as a huge, a changeover in how we see HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In the early web development phase, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, we know how they evolved. We saw CSS 2 and 3, and now there's no CSS 4. Basically, there are multiple specifications in CSS that are evolving independently. And again, we have ECMAScript 6 and like 7, 8, even 9, I think, is coming up. So there are, post the creation of Angular, React, and Vue, the kind of evolution in the specifications of JavaScript itself have changed dramatically. Like you're getting a lot of new features which were only possible through a framework. Now we are getting all of them in the native sphere. Like it is coming by default out of the box of the programming language. So then why do we have to get into that stack and get stuck in that silos? So that's the question. It begs. It poses a question. It poses a question that, like with web components, what we are essentially doing is we are creating modules. Lot of like a pure. I think it's a very good representation of Project Ara. So it kind of creates a lot of modules where you can pick and choose and create a UI from it. So it essentially address that problem in front end, but later, as I was mentioning, the project Tori, I think it started addressing the backend as well. So in Tori, what they're doing is they're trying to bring modularity in Python, JavaScript, and also PHP. So they were trying to bring this support. So this is very similar to the kind of approach that the lightweight CMSs are right now doing. like mini CMS like Ghost or WordPress for that matter, even Drupal. So all these projects, their architecture itself is transforming into something called headless, like where your backend and front end is getting decoupled, and you're able to create a lot of front ends. And even in front end, again, you have something called Jamstack, where your performance is getting drastically increased by making the website, majority of the website static, although it also contains some dynamic parts. So I think there's a lot of traction that is happening, but again, there are people who are in silos who are trying to kind of stop it, I guess. Yeah. Anyone who would like to add a point?
I do agree. Like most of us are being a silos, but if you take an example of Python, we can integrate Python in several other languages. But the main problem is like if someone wants to integrate Python with Java, like they developed from start JPython, which is based where Python is being written by on top of Java. The main thing is there should be some middleware. A language or some extension which can connect from one to other, which need not to be just an API, but which can be integrated inside a code, like we do containers, like some other thing which can be integrated inside the code. Then I think the programming or application development will be a revolutionary thing.
Yeah, I think it's true. For example, if you look at this machine learning libraries, there is a famous library called Caffe, which is an open source one developed by this Berkeley Software University. Berkeley University. So they built this Caffe entire library on C++, and then that framework allows us to write these Python bindings. To call the C++ bindings and to do the data manipulations using Python. I think it is pretty much easy in Python to do the data manipulations. For example, changing the images, pixels, and all. This is also kind of interoperability between the programming languages I have seen regarding this.
Yeah, when it comes to bundles, I run this. I run few language-based communities. One of them is Rust Hyderabad. So when I was running Rust Hyderabad in the initial days, it was also one of the initial meetup groups across the world in the Rust community. So we started building bindings for Rust Python and Rust Elixir and other bindings. So we kind of wrote a prototype for Rust Elixir and Rust Python, but in the whole process, so what we figured out is, the burden of developing these bundles is on the enthusiastic new learners. So when you mean enthusiastic new learners, who are typically, they are on the different kind of silos, of the corporate bubbles. They have their deadlines, project deadlines, other things. Or of course, IT employees one stakeholder the other way. So we have BTech students. They are not so well versed to write a bundle for two languages, binding for two languages. Okay, so that's practical problems. Okay, it kind of takes months and years to write a working binding, and by the time you get a version 1.0, you'll end up with version incompatibilities of both the languages. Okay.
Yeah.
So when the idea of writing a binding is not, it might sound simple, but it's very hard. So maybe we can try something simpler, reduce the burden on the independent developers. Maybe we should organizations and interest groups should come together, should collaborate to to draft a global standard, for languages to to make them interoperable with each other. And we also have to we have to communicate the same draft to all the maintainers of all the languages. I think that maybe that's the only sophisticated and workable method, I think.
Yeah, I would like to add one more development, historical development in that perspective, is the standardization regarding HTML5 and the death of Flash. I mean, I've surfed the web during the days of Flash. I know some of you have also seen the problems of Flash, the Flash plugin, and how the browsers behave with the Flash plugin. And once the HTML5 has standardized these protocols where you can play a video, you can play, you can create games in HTML5. Once that is standardized, that was the death of Flash, and that was the death of many other problems in browsers. Lot of many of the times I can see a lot of government websites not working on few browsers just because there's no Flash on it and there's no Flash support on it and all that stuff. I think Ranjit brought a very interesting point to the table: standardization. I think part of this modularity and part also comes as a part, like as a standardization thing. Like, for example, like Raja was mentioning D3.js, like many of the visualizations that are coming up with the new HTML5 standards, it is getting more and more beautiful. Like, I could see a lot of time graphs that are getting better now. There's a lot of new things in visualization just because there's a new standard that is coming up. So I think, yes, standardization definitely, like, it makes things so better, I would say. So yeah, any other points, like
just to add to Bobby's point regarding the visualizations, actually. So the reusable visualization, there are few free software visualization platforms with the open licenses. Let's say we have this thing called Raja. Just can you help me with that library?
Chartjs.
Which one?
Chartjs.
Not Leaflet. It's the visualization platform which we have.
Chartjs.
No, the platform.
Superset.
No.
You mean this AM line?
Yes, AM chats.
Achha.
AM chats. Okay.
Yeah. So it has a lot of reusable JavaScript visualizations things. So we can directly take it and we can directly publish on data onto that. In the same way, if someone is very uncomfortable with high code solutions, there are also very low code solutions such as Superset. We can take data and bringing polyglots onto these platforms. It will not only increase the development rate, but also it also helps the users in the user's perspective to understand the platforms very easily, and also to get into them and see other dimensions also inside that. So yeah, that's my point.
Satya, Bhavani or Vasavi?
Yeah. Adding to Bobby, I've just explored a new framework called CSS Houdini. CSS Houdini is like it is yet to be released, and it has many features like JavaScript included in it. So it's like saving a lot of time. I just want to add this point to Bobby, and moreover, What about Jamstack interfering with these polyglots? Jamstack, the JavaScript, the APIs, and the MongoDB models. How does it intervene in this polyglots thing? I always have this question.
Okay.
Jamstack is kind of a partial implementation of people's interest to move towards modularity.
Okay.
But maybe in the next Bob will talk about the rise of cloud computing and the role of free software in cloud computing. You'll understand how the paradigm is changing. But with the growth of cloud computing, so we have new practices in the industry across. So earlier, the de facto architecture to build an application is monolith.
Monolith, yes.
Earlier, now things are moving, towards to the microservices.
Yes.
Of course, the motivation is to reduce the billing of the cloud computing, but it is also making things easy for the people who maintain software in the servers. Now that it is, broken into micro modules, it is easy to update these modules parallelly and also asynchronously. Okay, so parallelly or asynchronously. So this is made possible because of breaking the monolith structure. Okay? Now that we have microservices in place, it is easier to switch a front end. For example, the FSMS website is built in Drupal backend. Okay, earlier we used to have a Drupal theme. What we did over the period of time, we took the content API and built a React front end. So, so this API is same. In the hackathons, the hackers just take the API and they hack, they try building multiple front ends. We have Gatsby front end, we have front end in Vue, we have a front end in Angular, and many other things with the same API, with the same API that is serving from the same backend.
Okay.
Okay. It is kind of in the middle of the way. Jamstack is kind of or the early steps of the application development moving to modularity.
Fine.
I think both web components and Jamstack are early steps in front end, I would say.
And now that we have so many Jamstack solutions with different features, maybe interoperability of features and components between these Jamstack solutions, will make things easy. If you see Vue.js, the point is, Vue.js came out of picking the good features from both Angular and React. Okay.
Yes.
For example, if you build, if you break this pillows and if you have this polyglot standardization, you need not to just you need not to write Vue. You can just pick models from React and Angular. It's a kind of distribution. It will just be a distribution. Okay. Like Vue, maybe someone else can do a better combination and create a more performative and better alternative than this.
I think I mean, just to add one more point, the same is happening with JavaScript backend. Like there used to be something called Node.js, and kind of had silos approach, I would say. Although it was trying to build an alternative to the existing or the status quo. Later, there's a new alternative called Deno.js. I think few of you would have known, where it was trying to build the same thing. Like it was trying to bring modularity. I think the most important feature in Deno is that modularity part, where you can just include any module anywhere from the internet, and it will be able to include that module and start building on that. So I think there is one more point.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. But this time Deno was built in Rust instead of C++. Unlike Node.js, it was built in Rust. Yeah. Fine.
Again, what it is built on and how it is supporting the other language, that's what. It's kind of a shades of gray. Like we are trying to get, different shades. So,
And you also have to understand, it is not that people are not interested to build this, modular approach, but there are great giants. They are worried if the modularity becomes the de facto thing in the industry, the giants will collapse. Okay, so you have to understand if the modularity program comes into place. So if the more we make things into modules, there's a raising question coming in the communities: who owns these modules? Okay, so take the famous case of Node.js. So Node.js, people across the globe, all the developers, all the young enthusiasts and students have jumped into the project of Node.js. They started building npm packages. Okay, we also have a active Debian community who are packaging all these npm packages into Debian family. Okay, this is one part to observe. This is the so-called popular npm.js. But everyone got shocked when the npm, the Node.js was acquired by GitHub. The Microsoft owned GitHub. Okay. So many developers who have developed many modules in Node and who have uploaded have never thought, maybe not enough vigilante about the ownership rules of those software. So what did Microsoft do in the overall process? We had thousands and lakhs of Node modules. Imagine Microsoft. What did Microsoft do? There's a venture capital money in the Node earlier. The Microsoft, because now that we have a venture capital money into, they have been flown into this Node project. Now they have to make profits. So they have a group of people inside lobbied, to sell it to Microsoft so that they'll get good returns of their investments.
Yeah.
Okay. And as an outrage, people started Deno project. It's a good progress, but unfortunately, the progress is very late. like always, progress is very late. Okay. So like Node project, we are seeing web components. Where we've been the future will see multiple platforms, multiple stores, which provide modular programming modules. Okay, like Node.js, like Deno. We have centralized now that we have centralized platforms. I'm also expecting in future we'll also see a huge growth of decentralized package registries. Okay, so it is high time all the developers who are developing modules, should be vigilant of the ownership of the modules they are developing. Okay, as a hacktivist of free software movement, we should grow awareness on should these modules be commodities or commons. So we generally call it module commons. So either be it in the software, be it in the phone. So for example, when we are discussing the project ARA, so all the modules will be the components, open hardware, open design, open designs. So all these will be module commons.
No,
Freedom modules, or in our similar language, we can call them freedom modules, or freedom modules. So modular, yes, we should move towards modularity. The industry already started making their baby steps into modularity, but still the giants are afraid if everyone starts building models, they'll lose their power. So to dilute the momentum of modularity, they're hugely investing in proprietary module registry initiatives, and we have to be very cautious about such deviating practices by the giants.
I think, I think Google abandoned some projects, right, regarding this modularity a couple of years ago. The same
That is Project Ara.
This is the same project.
Yes. So basically,
okay.
the Project Ara was started by Motorola, and
Then
Motorola was acquired by Google, and it was again sold to Lenovo. But the Project Ara team, the whole team was kept at Google. I think they wanted to kill the project.
So generally, what giants do it, if they find some very good project, they buy it and kill it.
Yeah.
I think in this view of this modular view components, we might look into this APIs design by the APIs.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we build a application using this Django framework, which is a modular view components, we can divide that into components. And what if we need same design with including these JavaScript components? I think using that API design level, we can include this JavaScript components in this Django as well. This is some intuition. I'm not sure how we gonna do this or not. Just keeping in the mind of this modular components, we might get this maybe in a couple of years.
Right. So due to time constraint, someone is speaking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one point for what Ramesh
Yeah,
said,
sure.
that,
Sure.
regarding the package registries. So GitLab has implemented this feature, like we can have our own package registries where we can develop our own packages and we can use it as a registry parallel to npm or any other thing. So and GitLab also has a community edition where across the globe we can whoever are having these community editions, we can also pull in them and we can ask them, like we can use their registries too. So
Sure.
it's a yeah, that's what.
Right. Thanks,
So-
Harisai. So I mean, due to time constraint, I'll have to stop all of you.
3 minutes.
Okay, I invite all of you to the next BOF in the same track. So we will be talking about so the rise of free and so-called open source in the cloud computing domain. Okay, so everyone is talking about cloud computing. So we also want to talk about and also the role of free software in cloud computing. Okay, so let me ask all of you to go to schedule. You'll find the link there, Jitsi link, and also ask Babu to please share the Jitsi link of the
Sure.
next BOF with this audience.
Just a second. I'll definitely share.
Not here. Maybe they can go and check.
Yeah, I'll just share the link
Could be done.
in the comments
Chat is available
or in the chat.
for public. They can join. No.
This is available for public.
Public.
No, it's the private URL. Just a
No,
second.
what I mean is,
Will join. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're done with this BOF. Maybe a minute or so. We have our next BOF at 5 o'clock. Take a small break.
Right. Right. Thank you all of you for joining and sharing your opinions on the topic polyglots and silos. Polyglots, not silos. Sorry. Yeah. So also thank you on giving different insights on different languages and how different projects evolved and how standards evolved over the course. Thank you so much. Is someone speaking? Right. Yeah. Thank you.